Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined again this week by Ruairi Walsh. Ruairi, how are things?
Great, Mark. Yourself?
Great. Many congratulations, Ruairi, on the Clare under-20 win. I suppose this episode will start with that emphatic win for Clare over Galway in the under-20s. We'll also have a look at the news coming from Kilkenny tonight. Derek Lyng departing Kilkenny senior management role. Get Rory's thoughts. We'll also look at last weekend's finals that were played in Croke Park, and also the previews of the provincial finals in Joe McDonough. Suppose, Rory, first off, let's go chronologically order. The under-20 All Ireland final, we did the preview last week, eagerly anticipated, and I have to say it was a very classy performance off this Clare under-20 side, beating Galway 420 to 216. I suppose, get your thoughts, Rory, on the game. I know you were there in Thurles on Sunday.
Yeah, they kept their best performance, Mark, for the final, didn't they? I think, obviously going through Munster and the battles they had to get through just to, qualify for Munster, first of all, to qualify for the knockout stages of Munster, where they had to go down to Cork then, away for a Munster semi-final, and produced a really good last 10 minutes. Then, as we know, Munster final, an absolute cracking game, went to penalties. And I think just you could see on the pitch the difference between off the ball more so, the hunger and swarming Clare were doing compared to when Clare were in possession. They just had it that bit more time compared to Galway. That was the main difference between the two sides. And you just wonder, does the Munster Championship battle-hardened teams that bit more? It definitely looks so. And I think the evidence of the Roll of Honour in the last nearly 20 years would definitely indicate that, winning the Munster Championship gives you a great chance of winning All Ireland. And incidentally, Clare, who have a very poor record in Munster finals, but the 5 Munster finals they've won, they went on and won the All Ireland afterwards. So, it's kind of a unique stat to have, that they're 5 out of 5 once they get out of Munster. But anyway, look, a great performance. You have to say well done to Terence Fahey, because I saw them the first night in the first round robin game up in Six Mile Bridge against Waterford, and they were very fortunate that night. The ball to hand wasn't working for them. It wasn't going through the lines. They were getting turned over time after time. And you were just wondering, was there a bit of expectation, as they were minor champions 3 years ago? Were they reacting a bit negatively to that? But in fairness to management, they got better round after round, game after game. They got slightly better. And I think that game down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, that final 10 minutes where they, really turned on the style, flipped the season for them in a good way. And look, they had some standout performances the weekend, no more so than the full forward line, where Thomas O'Connor got 2 goals. Mark O'Cleary won 2, a real threat inside. And of course, Paul Rogers just looks a real talent, and, straight out of minor last year, just looks so classy. Caught a great sideline over the bar as well to throw in with his few scores from play. And just his decision-making. He passed when he should have passed. And it's a great sign of a young player like that he's making the right decisions. And overall, I think, Clare, even at the back, the main threat for Galway being Jason Rabbit before the game. And I think the matchup was very good there, putting Matthew O'Halloran back on him, because he really stifled him in the first half. And when Galway needed to get a foothold, every ball Galway were playing was into Rabbit's corner, and he was getting very little change early on. Now, I know he really came into the game second half, Rabbit, but at that stage, Clare were, you could say, the game was wrapped up in a way. But I think Rabbit still showed us his talent and his unbelievable ability, to pluck ball from the air, even if it was kind of late on. He really needed a supporting cast, though, Mark. I felt he was a bit, on his own up front, just himself and the full forward as well. Brian Callanan, they were the 2 main threats. Whereas at the other end, I think all 6 Clare forwards had scored from play within 5 minutes of the second half. So kind of showed that Clare were causing massive problems up at the other end. Especially and I think I said to you beforehand, Mark, that the main turning point for me was, I know Galway had been playing with a bit of a breeze, but just before half time, Jamie Moylan, that unbelievable goal where he used his pace and just a great finish, because really Clare were set to go in maybe a point ahead, and it had been very tight, and that goal gave them that bit of a gap for it start to the second half. And within 6-7 minutes of the second half, once the third and fourth goals went in, and they were soon after each other, it was game over.
No, absolutely, Rory. Look, I watched it from home anyway, and to be perfectly fair to Clare, I mean, I thought first half was kind of cagey enough. Obviously, there's a few nerves on show from both sides, huge occasion. Thought Galway had some good moments, particularly in that second quarter. But as you say, without Aaron Nyland up front, along with Jason Rabbit, there definitely was a limited Galway attacking threat there, certainly. And as you said, I think the Jamie Moylan goal, and credit to Paul Rogers here as well, Rory, just the identification of space, seeing Moylan running into space, a great pass and an emphatic finish from the wing back. And again, a quick point straight after here gets a 1 point margin into a 5 point margin. And Galway really were playing catch up in the second half. But I thought, credit to Clare, like any good quality sides are, they had Galway by the throat and they killed this game off fairly quickly in the third quarter.
The first half, actually, maybe from 15 minutes to up until that Ireland goal, where Galway did have good foothold, I thought, in midfield. Killeen and Burke were, kind of beginning to dominate there. And as I said, it was Galway that kind of weren't getting enough result out of their forward line, considering the amount of possession they had. And the game was nip and tuck, and how Galway got that goal just for half time. You know what I mean? I know a big margin in the end, but sometimes games can flip on certain moments in it. But yeah, you're definitely right about Nyland. And he did look, when he came in, he still made a difference. And I don't know how injured he is, but obviously, word was coming that he wouldn't play any part in the game. But then we saw him as number 26 when Panel was named, and I presume it was last throw of dice for Galway to throw him in there. But yeah, you're right. If the two of them had been there, you've two senior hurlers there and guys that are going really well at senior to worry about. So the fact, a lot. It meant a lot depended on Rabbit, to be honest, and Clare could really kind of try and thwart that threat there and cut off not just the supply, but make sure Rabbit was being hounded every time he got the ball and didn't have much of a chance to get running at the Clare backs. So I think that they did that very well. Midfield, Graham Ball, another lad just out of minor from last year from Dory Barefield, thought he had an outstanding game as well. It's a good sign when your other midfield partner then gets you a lot of work. But midfield can bypass lads no matter how hard you're trying. Sometimes, the ball just seems to go elsewhere. But look, as I said, overall, just you have to be impressed with the forward line. Michael Collins ended up man of the match. Kilroy, who incidentally Lohan has been kind of using it as a cornerback when he's featured with the seniors, but I thought he did quite well wing forward. And Hegarty, of course, seems to be physique. It reminds me of a young Peter Duggan, who was on the last Clare 21 team to win in All Ireland. He is the size, the physique, very good right side, free taker, likes his sideline cuts, takes a lot of the Peter Duggan boxes, as a physique, I think, to maybe go in at senior level next year. And I just think overall, Mark, it was very important for Clare that this team came along when it did, because just looking at the age profile of the senior team, there's going to be a huge turnover of players. And if you're putting in guys that have had under 20 success, you're not trying to build up a confidence or whatever with young lads coming into the senior team. They'll feel that it's their turn now for a go at senior hurling. So it came at the right time for Clare, I think, that we've had this success, and hopefully we can build on it in the next few years at senior level.
Absolutely. I think, for Galway as well, it's identifying those 2 or 3 players from this current panel to get into a senior panel in the next year or two as well. But I definitely agree with you there, Rory. Just in terms of Clare, there's an abundance of riches here, particularly with the underage programs that have been running here at Clare in the last few years. And it must be superb being a Clare supporter here, just to see everything that's unfolding in Clare underage hurling wise. And I know you're very much involved in 6 Mile Bridge here, Rory, as well. So good times continue to lie ahead here for the banner.
Yeah, look, and it was great to see Matthew, as I mentioned earlier, and Mark Sheedy, who got a lot of plaudits for his campaign. Two lads from the bridge involved there, and both did very well throughout. But look, I suppose, and it was mentioned, there's a huge spread of clubs in this team, going all the way up, Scariff, we the manager from Whitegate, you was Clonlara involved again, a Rogue, Robert Loftus at full back, Captain Gunning from Broadford, who incidentally did very well, and Vince Morgan, who we know from club level with Loughrea can be a serious threat, but he kept him pretty quiet, which was a big factor as well in the game. But no, it's great to see that there's such a widespread of clubs involved, and it bodes well for the future in Clare. And I think that's one thing maybe that's happened over the last few years, since St. Flannan's, who's a powerhouse kind of secondary school hurling in Clare, since they were no longer boarding and became a mixed school, it meant, more schools were getting a higher level of player that normally would have been going into Flannans and maybe getting lost in the system there. Yeah. So the likes of Tulla popping up and competing at Harty level. Scariff have been very strong at B level, St. Cayman's as well. So look, even Ennis Diamond there won a Munster Championship recently at schools level too. So I think that's really helped. And Clare have put an emphasis on secondary school as well. And they run a secondary school competition kind of outside of the schools competitions just for, I think it's a maybe second year level in Clare. And so that's kind of and it's well sponsored and, well hyped up. So I think it's something that they really looked at, was not just backing up the academies, but getting the secondary schools hurling competitions quite strong and getting strong teams out there in Munster as well.
No, absolutely. No, and it's probably a springboard for further success here, Rory. So many congratulations to Clare, commiserations to Galway. The wait continues here into the 16th year for under 20, under 21 success. But I think Galway tried hard, but again, I think they're ultimately outgunned here, particularly in that third quarter when Clare really went for the juggler, for sure. But again, likes of Cannon inside, Rabbit, a Shaughnessy as well, Lean, Killeen. I think there's guys here that can really learn from this experience and move forward here, certainly.
Mark, I was just going to say that as well with Galway. I was just going to say, they already have 2 seniors picked up from this team, this could actually be quite a fruitful team for Galway. The fact they didn't win the final doesn't mean they're not going to get 4 or 5 seniors from this group. As I mentioned, games can flip in moments, and I think that couple of minutes before half-time, as you alluded to, was a huge turning point. As you mentioned, the likes of Killeen have already had success at senior level with their club. Vince Morgan I mentioned earlier, and Maher at wing back with Loughrea. And a lot of these lads as well, good success in secondary school level as well, at Athenry, Loughrea too, and Rayfields and Loughrea. So I think there's definitely, this team could be, one that will help build on in Galway. And I think Donoghue has already identified that, and, has already, they're not the only 2 boys that have been in training with Galway from this group either, So, I think both these teams could, teams that will be built on at senior level in the years to come.
Oh, no, absolutely, Rory, and very well said, to be fair. I think for Galway-wise, I'd say going into half-time, if they went down a point down, even with the slight wind advantage, I think they would have still felt they were in with a good shot, particularly introducing Aaron Nyland early in that second half. But as we've kind of repeat myself here, but again, that 3-3 kind of score spread either side of half-time really smashed open the game. But again, heartiest congratulations to Clare, and look forward to seeing both of these teams and how they emerge from these panels in the coming years. I suppose, Rory, next off, we heard news from Kilkenny tonight, just before we came on air, that Derek Lyng is going to step aside as Kilkenny hurling manager. I suppose, get your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I kind of feel a bit sorry for Derek Lyng, because he seems to be, he conducts himself so well in interviews, and he was kind of thrown, he was coming in after the Cody era with, that team that were on their way out, apart from, I suppose, TJ is one of the few guys that was still around from the in terms of All Ireland medalists there for and this transition, and first group of players that came in, that the likes of Owen Cody and as you mentioned, Adrian Mullen and these guys that kind of, let's say, appeared in the scene around 2018, 2019. These guys were seriously talented, but what happened was the next crop never came. He was kind of, still with that group of Hugh Lawler, Richie Reid, and he just needs, with any team, you need fresh blood coming in, and it's not from one to try and, we mentioned this, how it was a bit of a merry-go-round. He kept trying to find the next guys to come in. I think Cian Kenny probably the only guy who has, I know he's around now 3 or 4 years, but has really kind of broken in since he first came over. It has really nailed down a place full time. That's been the problem for him. He just hadn't that talent coming through from underage like Kilkenny previously had. And so he was kind of dealt a poor hand coming in there in terms of talent to pick from. And we've mentioned this a few times, when Kilkenny were able to put all 15 players on the pitch, they're a serious threat to anyone in the country. But unfortunately, and particularly this year, he just didn't have that luxury and was kind of dealing with injuries and maybe players out of form and so on. And I think we mentioned this last week, it was probably the Offaly result that sealed his fate in terms of, not getting the win up there, really put them on the back foot, and not qualifying from Leinster. It isn't a surprise really that he stepped aside because of that. But as I said, I think he seems to me like that he had to change as well the style of play of Kilkenny. To a more modern style as well, because they just didn't have the ball winners up front where you could, hit 50-50, even 25-75 balls up to the forwards, and Henry would win a ball, or Martin Comerford, or these lads, like they don't have those hurlers anymore, so they had to be more careful with possession and play through the lines. And so he oversaw that as well, bringing a more modern style to Kilkenny. But unfortunately, as we said, he just, in particular, didn't have the next set of forwards to step in. And especially when Hugh Lawler went this year, you were putting square pegs in round holes really to cover up for some of the absences from the defence. So I just think the next manager in, Mark, it's going to be a tough gig, isn't it? Because you're going to come to a stage now where even Martin Keoghan, Owen Cody, these lads who have been around a few years, they need new talent coming through. Like they have to freshen things up, but is a talent there? And I think that's where the problem will lie for whoever the next Kilkenny manager is.
No, absolutely, Rory. And look, I'm the same as you. I'd feel very sorry for Derek Lyng, really. I think he tried everything this year to really kind of get Kilkenny over the line. But as you said, an awful lot of things conspired. I definitely think the Hugh Lawler, and particularly Billy Ryan in that half-forward line, not committing this year were huge blows for him. And then when you throw in all the injuries, particularly Adrian Mullen, who'd been out for the majority of the campaign, came back for the Dublin game. Jordan Malloy then basically had a good midfield partnership with Kenny, but again, was out for that Dublin game. Look, his record speaks pretty impressively here. 3 Leinster Senior Hurling Championship titles won. He featured in one All Ireland Championship final against Limerick, obviously lost. They also featured in 2 National Hurling League finals and also 2 All Ireland semi-finals. So whoever the new incumbent is, Rory, has hard shoes to fill here, even with Derek Lyng coming straight after Brian Cody. I think that's an impressive record that Derek Lyng can be proud of.
Yeah, and another factor for a new manager coming in as well, Mark, is a resurgent kind of Galway and Dublin as well. And awfully, so Leinster has suddenly got a lot more competitive. And whereas there was a couple of years where Kilkenny, if they performed against Galway in a Leinster final or against Dublin in a Leinster final, they were Leinster champions without too much stress during Leinster. That's completely flipped now. You've that on top of everything else. But look, I think Derek Lyng did the best of what he had there at his disposal. And even last year against Tipperary, they produced a great performance in the All-Ireland semi-final. And, what became a goal fest, and you had that whole scoreboard malfunction situation at the end. Like, in fairness, he's had no luck either. Then the previous year, I suppose, against Clare in the All-Ireland semi-final, where Kilkenny were so well on first half, only for Quilligan to pull off 2 or 3 outstanding saves and Clare to come back at them then in the second half. Potential All-Ireland final that could have gone his way. But for overall, as we said, and again, not to be in the habit of repeating myself either, but I just think that just not having a conveyor belt that Kilkenny were so used to, the next forward coming in, the next big name coming that we all hear about from under 16 up, the Kilkenny have a star, like that's been missing from Kilkenny hurling. Yeah, it's just, I think, like Derek Lyng, as I said, like he just didn't have that firepower coming through.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there, Rory. But I think this, for the Kilkenny County Board and club delegates and the whole county, I think a good retrospective is required, because we talk about the underage talent in Kilkenny here, Rory, but it's clear to see, like schools-wise, it's thriving. St. Kieran's being a fairly dominant force in hurling in national secondary schools. So again, it's that translation of form in secondary schools. Like even the minors, we had Walter Walsh on a few weeks ago, who was really impressed by the Kilkenny minors. But again, they've been, they're out of the championship after their loss to Cork in the quarterfinals. So, I mean, there is a bit of soul searching here in Kilkenny. It's not just one man that needs to be replaced and everything is hunky-dory. I think there is a significant kind of reset in terms of Kilkenny hurling probably is required, just in terms of the identification of those new players, whether it's the Richie Hogans, Richie Powers, the next guys coming through. Because certainly Kilkenny as a hurling county will produce players, but it's just how to get them the pathway from underage stars to senior needs to be probably evaluated here. I suppose, Rory, before we go here, who do you feel is the likely contenders to replace Derek Lyng as Kilkenny senior manager?
Yeah, now, I know Kilkenny have gone outside the county for coaches before, but I don't see them going there with manager. So you're looking at maybe Brian Dowling, who's had good success with Kildare. Eddie Brennan has inter-county experience as well as manager. I suppose Henry Shefflin looked like he was going to be the chosen one for a while, and then there was that bit of a row with Cody, you could say, and he has gained inter-county experience with Galway. and he was over the under-20s this year. So, he has an idea of what talent is coming through. So, maybe Henry Shefflin and a combination of some of the guys previously mentioned. That's probably, I'd be surprised if to go maybe outside of those three. Do you give any other names there yourself, Mark, that might be putting their hand up for this?
No, I think they're probably the candidate list. And to be fair to Derek Lyng, he tried everything this year. He revamped the backroom staff. He brought in Eddie Brennan. He brought in likes of Niall Corcoran, who's a very well-respected hurling coach as well, to really kind of start emphasising this whole transition between direct ball into the run game. So, I mean, even Corcoran's name probably could be mentioned here. But I think definitely, Rory, I think those three candidates you've outlined definitely would appear to be the front runners here. But again, I'd hate to repeat myself again, but I think Kilkenny County Board, there's an awful lot of soul searching going to be required here within Kilkenny circles, just in terms of how they reset here and how they move on from a challenging year here for the senior team. Like, the league form was very inconsistent, and I mean, the Leinster Championship very much was yo-yo. I mean, very dominant wins against Wexford and Kildare, but once they went on the road, there was vulnerabilities there for all to see, particularly against Galway in the league and championship, and also against Offaly, which would have been seen in the last few years as a banker for Kilkenny. But again, Offaly have emerged. They're improving all the time. But again, from a Kilkenny perspective, the fact that they weren't able to close this out, as you say, Rory, I think the red flags were basically being issued around Kilkenny after that. And I mean, Dublin really did see them off fairly quickly. So no, it's not going to be no quick fix here. But again, Kilkenny don't do panic, do they? And I think the County Board will have a critical assessment in terms of who the next guy will be. So look, wish Derek Lyng all the best here as well, because 3 decades of commitment to Kilkenny as a player and then as a manager, and I'd imagine as well Derek Lyng, he will go back into club hurling and he'll help whoever the incumbent actually is. So look, we wish Derek Lyng all the best here, but again, it's going to be interesting times in Kilkenny.
Sorry, Mark. No, I was just going to say, Mark, maybe the whole secondary school situation with St. Kieran's been so dominant. Now, I know Kilkenny CBS as well, have done pretty well in recent years, but like, there isn't a real geographical spread of Kilkenny schools. I know Johnstown do great work, but as well, but you don't hear, of other Kilkenny schools coming to the fore, and maybe just that focus on St. Kieran's, and it's not more a spread throughout the county, could be a factor. Now, I'm saying this from the outside looking in. I just know in Clare that maybe Flannans, who are still very competitive, but that whole aura and dominance of Flannans, kind of all the top hurlers in Clare going in there and so on. I think since that has changed, it's benefited Clare, especially underage. Maybe similar could happen in Kilkenny.
No, I think all bets are off here, Rory, in terms of the underage talent identification, because it's worked a charm from Clare. Obviously, you've alluded to that very well in terms of the Flannans case study, but I think Kilkenny definitely will have to look at this as well. It's small enough county Kilkenny, but again, their hurling talent is there, so I think it's just a case of getting a few ideas on the table and looking at other counties in terms of how they've developed and nurtured. I think Clare will be probably one of them, which they'll have a close look at. But we wish Derek Lyng well anyway. It's interesting news coming from Kilkenny. I suppose before we leave last weekend's activities here, Rory, we had 3 All Ireland senior finals up for decision. Laurie Marr, Nikki Rackard and Chrissy Ring. We have to give heartiest congratulations to Longford, New York and Derry, who triumphed here. Derry, it's a great news story here for Ulster hurling, defeating Kerry very convincingly. New York accounting for Tyrone in a very exciting final in Nikki Rackard, and Longford in a titanic struggle against Leitrim, winning 118 to 113. Suppose get a few thoughts from you, Rory, in terms of those finals in Croke Park.
Yeah, and the game I saw a good bit of was the Derry and Kerry game. Like, Kerry went into this game as favourites. They have been the team that have been up at Joe McDonagh level, and we're kind of dropping down to pop back up again, but it doesn't go like that, as we know. And Derry are a county that have really put a focus on hurling, as we know from Slaughtneil, and are just improving all the time. And I just thought they were superb. Like, the forwards, the scores they were getting. I thought the striking of their forwards in particular, real clean, crisp striking and scores from distance as well. And they had a real kind of spread of scores. Like, as we know, Cassidy's a serious hurler. Like, he ended up at 1-4, I think, from play. I think back. Gave a magical performance. And if it wasn't for Padraig Boyle and the Kerry side, who scored 110, it was just a complete handful for the Derry defence all game. They would have won by even more. Like, I just thought that Kerry were that bit reliant on him inside. And we know since the likes of they've lost like to Shane Conway and so on, and Mackesy to Kilkenny, and like they have been dealt a few blows over the last couple of years, Kerry, and just especially particularly to their scoring power up front, and it really told in the final. And I know I'm saying that, and they put up a score of 319, but some of those scores came at the very end. Derry had raced into a 10-11 point lead, and I think some of the goal the last goal in particular in injury time just kind of made it look a bit closer than it was, because Derry were true winners here and just gave a real dominant performance.
I think it's a great news story, as I said, for Ulster hurling. And look, they get into Joe McDonagh next season, which will be tough. But again, Derry know what they face. Definitely Ulster teams in Joe McDonagh next year. Precisely Antrim down, so for Westmeath as well. So they'll be under no illusions here, and it'll be interesting to see with GAHQ in terms of any development that might be going on here behind the scenes in Derry, just to prepare them for Joe McDonagh next season. But again, commiserations, Kerry. I know there's been a big rebuild there in the last year or two. It's great to see them coming back in. Again, they had promotion this year as well. So things are on the upward trajectory in the kingdom. So we wish them well for next season. I suppose the New York story as well, Rory, caught my attention as well. Particularly Tyrone. Tyrone was very impressive in terms of the round robin. But again, the New York juggernaut, as they say, likes of Glyn and Co. Came to the party. It was a very exciting final, to be fair. 222 to 217. I suppose you get your high-level thoughts in terms of that final.
Yeah, and I know it's sparked a bit of controversy since, as people saying should New York have even been in the competition and so on. But look, I suppose from like a New York perspective, I presume even the logistics of getting the team training, because lads are spread all over the city and New Jersey and so on, coming into play for them. Plus, traveling back to Ireland and so on with things like visas and Trump's border control and everything. Like there must be a few lads sweating there as they're getting into the airport. They have a good talent spread, like from, as we know, guys that have played, a lot of them underage with their various counties. I know a couple of lads from Clare involved with Ruairi Walsh from Éireog, who would have been a prominent senior hurler with Éireog before crossing the Atlantic. And Johnny Glynn, as you mentioned, who has become, I think the stat was, Christy O'Connor had it in the paper the other day, the first player to win 3 senior championships at 3 different levels. So fair play to them. But look, the interesting thing was, last year when they won the Lowry Mar, I think they were way ahead of the teams that were playing in it, and it was almost a bit unfair that teams who had battled and even say Longford and Leitrim this year, who had got there on merit themselves and were playing their own final at their own level, where it was going to be a real achievement to win, we're suddenly facing a New York team filled with hurlers from Limerick, Tip, Clare, Galway and so on. It was going to be a real tall order. But this year, Tyrone were kind of, they gave them a great game, and Tyrone, as we know, had done really well in the round robin, and were they were a match for New York for most of the game, and it took everything New York had to get over the line. And you would feel sorry for Tyrone and thinking knowing they were the best team in their division, only to be pipped by New York. But you have to give New York a chance to play competitive games as well, and I think this is the only way they can do it. You can't put them in a round robin. It's logistically impossible. So for them to come in the semi-final, final stage, I think it's the only way they can kind of do it, Mark, to be honest. And I don't think they can be excluded either. And next year, if they do go up to Christy Ring, it's another step up again. And will they have it as easy, up there? I don't think they will, and they'll find it a lot tougher at that level, even if they are coming in at semi-final stage. So I just say fair play to New York, well done, and of course well done to Tyrone. And if Tyrone are good enough, they'll win it next year and get up to Christy Ring that way.
Oh, absolutely. No, it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And I think Tyrone will be back with a vengeance next year. And I think New York, look, I've lived in Boston for a few years, and to be fair, the commitment of those New York players, particularly travelling long distances to get to training from one side of New York or New Jersey, is very admirable. And again, their passion and their love for the sport of hurling is there for all to see. And again, I think it was a great kind of win for New York, certainly. And again, it's all about inclusion here. So it will be interesting with the GAHQ in terms of how they play this in terms of running of the Christy Ring, because as you said, logistics operation here to get your backroom staff, management and players, and to get them on a plane to come to Ireland to play games, that's going to be a challenge. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the GA HQ will actually approach that. But again, they have to be included in the Christy Ring. And I do firmly agree with you here, Rory, particularly in Christy Ring. It will be a case of them having to compete here. It will be a level playing pitch because definitely the standard in Christy Ring has exceeded all expectations again this year. So more to follow there. But yeah, it was a good final anyway. And look, Longford just pulling away at the end against Leitrim. That was a very topsy-turvy game, I would say. Both teams had their moments given the RT TV package. And again, heartiest congratulations to Longford and also to Leitrim as well for great seasons. It was great to see the three finals as well, Rory, being played in Croke Park, just for those players as well, to really get an experience of playing in the National Stadium.
Yeah, and just as well, and it's something Anthony Daly touched on, he was kind of wondering if they put one of the finals as the curtain raiser for the under-20 game, would have gotten more exposure. Definitely would have got a bigger crowd, you know. But I think if you ask the players, they want to go play in Croke Park, like it might be the one chance to get, you know. But another one, if Christy Ring final next year is New York and London, I think they're going to have to get the Faroe Islands. They're going to have to put a pitch there as a neutral venue. So the GA need to start looking at that. We're getting bits and pieces of this, Mark, maybe a 2-minute showing at the end of the Sunday game. And you just wonder, especially with the Joe McDonagh Cup, which we're going to be talking about in a while, like the serious hurlers in that, and hurling people want to see these games. And I think even the way the fixtures are going, there was one weekend where there was no hurling games at all, just kind of football, and it was crying out for around the Joe McDonagh games where there could be a bit of focus on it. So like the GAA, I think, are definitely getting things wrong with the promotion of the second tier and even the tiers below that as well. So it's something that really needs to improve with this new hurling development committee and so on, because if hurling is to grow, you have to start with the second tier, the teams that are just below Liam McCarthy level, by giving them the resources they need and the exposure they need, I think is the first step.
I completely agree, Rory. I think, you know, particularly Christy Ring, Nicky Rackert, Laurie Mara, they need their own media, to be fair. And like for RTE, they don't have the infinite resources to run cameras all across the country here. So I think GA have to play this smart and really look to some sort of innovative packaging of these games. Because, I mean, let's face it, Rory, like for those three competitions we've outlined, the season's over. Like, it's only a 3-month season. It's a bit of a whirlwind for those intercounty players, particularly. And also Joe McDonagh will face, you know, we'll have the preview of Carol O'Leash in due course. But I mean, yeah, it just... Yeah, the number of games being so condensed, really it does, for me, kind of prompt questions here in terms of the packaging, the promotion of these games. And, you know, like TG4 have been absolutely superb on the underage. But is it maybe time for another TV partner to kind of come in here and really kind of look at these kind of games, or even a social media channel to really kind of promote and really drive these competitions to new levels? I think these are conversation points that we could certainly have, Rory, in an upcoming episode, but these are all good points. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.